How many times have you used your phone for research at school or work? How many times have you read a text or listened to a voicemail and thought, oh, maybe I'll just deal with that later? How often is your very first interaction with someone, either via text, via email, via phone call, Zoom call, Teams, or anything of that sort, instead of physically in person? My name is Sarah, and I hope to kind of touch base on some of these questions today, as well as the main research question: how does the use of technology in terms of communication change the way that people form relationships and their own personal identity? I would like to touch on this question in order for everybody to better understand how much of an impact technology really has on our everyday communication. So today I'm going to touch on how technology affects our communication via school and work, how it affects our online connections, and how it affects our personal relationships, whether it's family, friends, or even with ourselves. So in order to touch on this research question, I conducted a research survey that was compiled of 10 questions, and in return, I got 17 responses. Today, I'm going to go over a couple of those questions, as well as some external sources that just go towards this research regarding technology versus personal connections. So one of the questions that I asked was, have any of you guys had a connection begin online? I had no specifications on this, so it could be completely up for interpretation, whether it's just a follow, whether it's a Tinder match, or anything of this sort. Have you had a connection begin online? 13 out of 17 of my responders responded yes, that they have had a communication begin online. And in today's generation, that is very common for a communication to start online. But some people will think, will this online connection transfer well in person? ABC News interviewed this girl named Zilla, who has many online connections, many online friends, and some of them have even translated into in-person conversations. This is a quote from Zilla, from A Guide to Meeting Your Internet Friends on ABC News. There is a risk your friendship doesn't translate offline, but I thought, if things didn't mesh in real life, I'd still be perfectly happy continuing to chat online. So, this just goes to show that some people have a completely different relationship, a completely different persona online than in person. So, how will this affect our communication in the long run? Will we go to fully online communication where it won't matter how you act in person? Or will in-person communication have a comeback and it will matter how you communicate in person? Many people nowadays do only have relationships online. This is another quote from Miss Zilla, just going to kind of show more about that relationship. She says, just because you can send pictures all day does not mean you can keep a conversation going on all afternoon. So this also goes to prove that some people, even with a relationship started online, it just does not match in person. So therefore, should you really be having that relationship if it will not matter for you in the future? And online connections can also be started via work or school. Especially with the COVID-19 pandemic about 4 years ago, there has been a huge push for working at home, doing school at home. And this can greatly affect communication with peers. And many would say that it does actually have a negative impact on schooling because people of younger ages are not getting that social communication with their peers that they need at such a young age in order to learn social cues and learn things for the future. In the survey that I conducted, 10 out of 17 people actually ranked on a scale of 1 to 10 a 5 or below regarding how negatively the internet/social media has affected the school environment. So this means that more than half of the people who took this survey believes that it was negatively impacted, that school was negatively impacted by social media and the internet. And this is a very controversial take to some people, but it is not allowing the younger generation to learn how to communicate with their peers and to learn how to communicate with teachers, learning those authoritative figures at a young age that are not just their parents. Another concern is working from home, and coworkingresources.org, in the article The Negative Effects of Working from Home on Company Culture, states, Remote working isn't conducive to meaningful relationships with coworkers. And this also goes to show that people who are working from home do not understand a company culture. So when they're looking for new jobs in the future, or when they're staying at their current job, they don't understand why they're staying. If it's just for the paycheck or if it's for the company culture, they like their boss, they respect their boss, they respect their peers, they like their team. This relationship is not established because they only know their staff over an email. They only know their manager over an email. It's very difficult to tell if you're doing your job correctly if you cannot hear the tone of someone's voice in person. This communication that happens in an in-person job versus working from home. Communication via technology also greatly can affect personal relationships, family, friends, and yourself. In the survey that I conducted, 13 out of 17 people actually rathered the in-person communication with family and friends and relatives versus an online communication, which I think is amazing. People still want to be able to communicate with their families in person, but this also goes to prove that people are more uncomfortable in those situations at work or at school when they would rather not have that in-person communication, where they would rather work from home, have school from home, and they only want to stay in their comfort zone with their friends and their family in person. Additionally, the Center for Intimacy, Communication, and Change discusses kind of how the positives and the negatives of communication on a family type of relationship. So they kind of dive deep into how technology is good for long distance families, people that don't get to see their family often, families that are out of the country or out of the state. A quote from them is, "Technology acts as a bridge that spans vast distances. It permits us to stay connected to loved ones regardless of where they are situated." So this is a positivity of social media and phone calls and technology in how we communicate, because it keeps you connected to those that are far away. But so this article also discusses digital distractions, which can be quite the challenge for friends and family that do see each other often in person, that they are not spending that quality time learning to communicate with each other and communicating with each other in general, because they have this distraction. Whenever something gets uncomfortable, they can pull out their phone and swipe, and then it's no longer uncomfortable because you're back in your phone, you're back in that safe space. And then also with online and technology can greatly influence your relationship with yourself. This goes back towards the textbook with the uses and gratifications theory. People use technology and social media to kind of hone in and fulfill their personal needs and preferences instead of learning to be out of their comfort zone, learning to communicate in these uncomfortable situations. They're using that uses and gratifications theory. And additionally, with your relationship with yourself, mindbodygreen.com states, even though social media is meant to promote communication, multiple studies have linked social media use with loneliness, mood disorders, and poor self-esteem. So, communication and technology can actually be negative for your personal relationship with yourself, learning how to communicate with yourself. You have to establish a different relationship where you are taking that information you see on social media and turning it into positive things, instead of that being a bad communication network towards your brain. So all this research that I have found kind of just goes towards how the use of technology affects communications and how it affects the way that people form relationships and personal identities. So to conclude, personal identities and relationships in general have all been affected by technology, whether it be positive or negative. That is up to everyone's personal and individual needs via social media technology, but it has been highly affected and it will continue to be highly affected in today's world. Thank you so much.